Hello folks, Tim Goff here, and today's gonna be a bit of a weird one. This is the video I'm afraid to make because it's weird. I'm talking about something that I'm making and I'm gonna be selling, and self-promotion is hard whoever you are, but in the Christian world, self-promotion is seen as like unholy, proud, not very humble. We're encouraged not to celebrate the things we believe God has called us to do and things that we do well, which is hard, and it's a little bit weird. When I wrote Rebooted a couple of years ago, I found it really hard to tell people about it because of all those things. But it's a good book. It genuinely is a good book. And I should have told people more it was a good book. But today is different. Today is about a different book, a new book that I'm writing, which I'm really nervous about. And the big elephant in the room, which is what this is about today, is I'm self-publishing it. Everyone in the Christian world told me do not self-publish. Whatever you do, any publisher is better than no publisher. And I get why they say it. Self-publishing comes with this connotation that it wasn't very good. It wasn't good enough to be published. And you know what? Most of the time, I agree with that. I've got a lot of self-published, well, no, I've had a lot of self-published books that have been sent to me for review, and on the whole, they end up being given away. At the most basic level of copy editing, they're often full of grammar and flow and spelling issues and mistakes. And you go, yeah, that's not that important, Tim. It's about telling the story. Sure, but imagine watching the movie where the sound constantly drops out, or the picture goes funny, or the color grading goes from yellow to green to blue. Unless that's a story you're telling, it's going to drop you out of it. And when books are poorly edited, they lose me as a reader. And another thing that a lot of self-published Christian books have in common is that they're often just a bit weird. Some of the theology can be off, or they think they've got new ideas, and the fact is they just haven't read other books which have already said what they've said better. Or they're just really preachy. And as someone who sits on an editorial board, one of the reasons books don't make it through our process is because they're preachy. Yes, we want to preach the gospel, but preaching and preachy are very different things. It's very different saying, love one another, be servant-hearted, and, Christians just don't love each other, that's not servant-hearted. The tone of how we say these things matters. So why would I self-publish? I'm kind of reluctant to say, but because of the issues that Christians have with self-publishing, I think it's worth saying it's not because I didn't have an offer of a contract. I was offered a publication contract, a book deal for this next book, and I've decided that wasn't the right route to take for this message. Now, there's a whole bunch of reasons for that. The first one is about creative control. I've been writing long enough and I've read enough youth work ministry related books now to know the kind of voice that I want to present into the marketplace as it exists. I know somewhere it will need nuancing, and some places it will need to be edgier than what's currently there to incite interest. But more than that, I want the whole thing to tell one story. I've had issues before when other people have had a final say over titles or chapters or summaries or imagery and design, that it feels like the piece that I wanted is telling several stories rather than one really clear story. And by controlling everything from title to design to typesetting to page numbers to page size to chapter length to how summaries are done to quotes, controlling all of that allows me to tell one story. Is that a very controlling thing to do? Yeah, probably. This is where self-publishing doesn't have to be terrible. So one of the things that I'll be doing is getting lots and lots of feedback. People to read it for me, to give me feedback, to give me honest, challenging content feedback, as well as design and imagery and story feedback. The second reason to self-publish is I can choose my own editorial team. And this is another way of making a self-published book better, is actually by investing in it and spending money on designers, on proof checkers, on index makers, on copy editors, and putting a team together that's really high quality. Imagine you were putting a band together but you weren't allowed to pick your musicians. How do you know that the musicians you're going to work with are going to represent the music that you want to make? So I will be investing in this and allowing an editorial team to be a real part of the structuring of that process. The third reason why I want to self-publish, and this might sound incredibly materialistic, is it allows me to set the price. Now, one of my first editors told me that there is a psychological benefit for this kind of book if it's sub 200 pages and sub £10. But because COVID has made publishing houses, especially independent and smaller Christian publishing houses, struggle in the last 18 months, some book prices are rising, or good titles are not being published that can't meet that minimum financial threshold. So by self-publishing, I can sell my book for cheaper. Because I have a full-time job, it doesn't affect me how much money I make from it. It's more important to me that people are able to get the message. So I could sell my book for a minimal price that will allow it to get into people's hands. That said, the likely chances that the royalties per sale will be larger than with a major publisher. Rather than being sort of 8 to 10%, it's more likely to be 20 to 35%. And that will allow me to potentially pay back the money that I invest in the cover design and the copy editors and those sorts of things. And the fourth reason, there's a fourth reason that I want to self-publish, is to market it the way that makes sense to me. Now, I've done marketing consultancy work. I've got a good idea of how to get a message to market. The problem is selling it to the right people. I'd rather sell a book to 10 readers who are going to digest it and going to be affected by it and challenged by it and changed by it than to 200 people who are just going to buy it and put it on their shelf. I want to target my readership much more narrowly than a publishing house will require. Again, a publishing house puts a lot of initial investment into it. They tend to print a larger number of copies, and so they need to make that investment back. But as a self-publisher, I can print on demand and I can sell it in smaller batches, which means I don't need to sell it to everybody and their dog. And the fifth reason, final reason, number 5, the fifth reason that I want to self-publish this book is just to see if it can be done. To see if you can get a good message for a good medium through basically crowdsourcing the process. Is it possible for me to get my book into the right people's hands without bankrupting me and without needing someone else to promote it for me? Is that even possible? So those are the reasons why I want to self-publish. Can't remember what they all were now. Creative control, developing a team around me, marketing it to the way I want to market it, telling a consistent story, which is, I think, the first one, and what's the one I just said? These are really important points, by the way. I thought really hard about it. Yes! To see if it actually works. So that's my self-publishing idea. The book is about young people. It's about young people in church, and particularly why do young people keep leaving the church. It's not aimed at youth workers, it's aimed at pastors, and I genuinely hope it's going to be really helpful. If it's not, don't read it, don't buy it, don't recommend it, don't review it. But if it is helpful, do the nice versions of those things. Good. Thanks, folks. Bye-bye.